Good afternoon, Charlotte family. Good afternoon, Charlotte family. We're back in person, right? All right. Can we start by giving a great hand to the catering and wait staff in here that has been delivering for us for the past hour? You know, Kirsten, if I can start with just a moment of personal confession. Um, As you know, my wife Andrea has been a member of the YWCA board for several years. And because many of those years were during the pandemic, it gave me an opportunity to, on my refrigerator runs, eavesdrop on your board meetings. And what I heard and learned was encouraging. I've always known Andrea was awesome, but the way that you all as a team, as a board, Shelley, always kept the discussions focused on the best interests of children, women, families, with equity centered was inspirational. Kirsten, in the video you mentioned that in the early 90s, you worked at the YWCA and you would go to the preschool program in the morning and then the after school programs in the afternoon. And what you didn't mention, which I know, then you would go work a job at night. You would work a job at night. There are a lot of reasons why the YWCA worked in Charlotte. Great board, great staff, great donors, but leadership matters. And yours is a brand of leadership that did not begin when you became executive director 14 years ago, but your commitment and your passion has remained the same. Charlotte, can you help me in celebrating over 30 years of commitment to the Charlotte community in the form of Kirsten Sickley? All right, sit down, my time's running out. I am originally from the south side of Chicago, and my wife Andrea and I moved to Charlotte 8 years ago because we thought it would be a great place to raise our daughter Amber, who was 12 at the time. But if I'm perfectly honest, we moved from Boston to Charlotte after the winter of 2014 when there was 112 inches of snow and we decided winter was a choice. But I am happy to be in this community. I'm happy to see all of you all here. We're happy to be back in person. You could be so many other places right now, but I'm happy that you decided to invest your time and your resources right here. You know, Bakari reminds me of the story of an old man who decided to marry a very young woman. And as the story is told, he was an old jealous man, and he became ill. And he pulled his young wife by his bedside. He said, "Promise me that when I die, you're going to bury me with all of my money. Because I don't want you spending my money on any other man. Please make that promise." And she made the promise, and it came to pass that the old man passed away. And the young widow approached the casket with her girlfriend by her side. She pulled an envelope out of her purse and placed it in the casket. And as she began to walk away, her girlfriend shook her head and said, "Tell me, girl, you didn't keep that promise." She said, "I did, but I wrote him a check." We can't make these investments when we're no longer here, so we might as well do it while we're here. I've never seen a U-Haul hooked to a hearse. Somewhere there's a Gen Zer leaning over saying, "What's a check?" But we have to make the critical investments. And Linda, there's no more important topic for us to discuss today than providing all children, all women, all people an opportunity to learn and to thrive. Many of you already know several years ago, Charlotte was a part of a study conducted by researchers at Harvard University and the University of California, Berkeley. And the study indicated that Charlotte was 50 out of 50 in social mobility as compared to other large cities. The study found that a child born in the lowest quintile had less than a 4.4% chance of reaching the highest quintile in Charlotte. What is the highest quintile? It's where many of us who sit here today likely find ourselves in wages relative to others within Charlotte. And while we enjoy ourselves today, I want us to sit in our privilege, because with that privilege comes responsibility. The study also indicated that for children of color, that opportunity was even less. And if you know anything about social mobility being connected to wages, it found that women and women of color had a very difficult challenge, because they are often those individuals who are working the jobs, working more, but being paid less. It's no wonder, with all of those factors, the study was entitled, "Where is the Land of Opportunity?" Now, some of you might say, well, the study came out in 2014, you moved here in 2015. Why would a black man with a black wife and a black daughter move from Boston to Charlotte when the study came out in 2014 and move here in 2015? What type of fool are you? Well, it's a fair question, but I also know that during my life, when I've had occasions to visit Charlotte, I met people in communities that were warm and embracing. I saw a city that was becoming increasingly diverse. I saw a corporate and financial infrastructure that was healthier and more robust than many of those cities on that list of 50. I saw a public college system in North Carolina that had great options, which as a parent meant great in-state tuition rates. I saw one of the fastest growing cities in our country, a community with an ability to be a city set on a hill. I get it. The assessment said Charlotte is 50 out of 50, but our ability says that it's a city resource rich. The assessment said Charlotte is a lagger. Our ability says that Charlotte is full of leaders. The assessment says Charlotte is problematic. Our ability says Charlotte is pregnant with potential if we are willing to labor to give birth to that potential. And my grandmother taught me long ago that you never let your deficiency become your identity. And this is something that we too often do with our young people and those most vulnerable. We assess them at a moment of time, and then we allow that assessment or that deficiency to become their identity, instead of bridging the gap between that assessment and their ability and creating new opportunities. That's the story of my life. As Kirsten said, long before Harvard, long before law school, long before my beloved HBCU, Xavier University, I'm a product of the South Side of Chicago and Chicago public schools. How many of you all attended a public school? Look around. And yet there's a narrative that our public school system doesn't work. Unless we're just a group of self-professed failures, our public school system works. It's like our democracy. If we work it, it can work better for us. But it works. Never let your deficiency become your identity. Where is the land of opportunity, Harvard University? Where's the land of opportunity, UC Berkeley? You missed it. It's right here in Charlotte. You see, Sharon, we are more alike than we are different. Let me test it. We know what goes up. Use your words. If it ain't broke, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, chances are we are more alike than we are different. In fact, on my first day every semester when I taught at Georgetown, I would remind the students that there's clear biological evidence that indicates we're 99.6% the same. In fact, there are more genes to explain the variance in our eye color than our racial or ethnic differences. So to the degree that we're 99.6% the same, any variance that we're able to identify by race or ethnicity is not caused by the racial or ethnic differences, but the social policies and social practices which create those differences. So the question here, How and why are we able to predict here who's more likely to graduate and who's more likely to be suspended? Who's more likely to be gifted and talented and who's more likely to be homeless? Who's more likely to die of homicide? Why are we able to predict? And our challenge is to identify the social policies and practices which lead to those disparities and address them. Charlotte, we have the resources we need. We do. We have the people we need, and we do. So the question that remains is, why are so many people around us, in the words of Paul Laurence Dunbar, only being offered a crust of bread and a corner to sleep in, a minute to smile and an hour to weep in, a pint of joy to a peck of trouble, and they're never to laugh because their moans come double, and that's life for too many among us. So David, after doing my own assessment, considering the population size, we have the resources, considering the people we need, why don't we have the results we desire? Now at this point, I need you to hold on to your seats. I need you to not get offended because I'm not going to bury the lead. Look out in the first row in case someone throws something. Charlotte doesn't have a land of opportunity issue. Charlotte has a love issue. I know some of you are saying, wait, I left my job, I came here to this luncheon, and you're telling me I don't love enough? Others are saying, wait, the researchers came here from Harvard and UC Berkeley. They did the regression analysis. They identified the social capital disparities, the education disparities, the race factors, and you're here saying that it's about love? Bruh, you soft. Yes, it's not a land of opportunity issue. This land that we call Charlotte has been blessed since the Catawba and Waxhaw natives stewarded the land for generations. This land that we call Charlotte was thriving in the Second Ward when it was known as Brooklyn, with more than 1,400 thriving shops, businesses, and places of worship. Yes, it's not a land issue. I say it's a love issue because I want you to think about somebody you really love dearly. Think about them. You feed those that you love. You clothe those that you love. You ensure those that you love have shelter. Yet, here in Charlotte, we are able to identify by race who is less likely to feel that love. It's a reality. So, Ivra, after we step away from the paralysis of analysis, we've got to accept the simple fact that when it comes to racism, it's nothing more than institutionalized lovelessness, systemic lovelessness. And I'm not saying the solution here is give out more hugs. That's on you. I'm not saying that we have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. COVID killed that. But it is asking and answering the question, how can we build the types of systems, policies, that every person, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, has an opportunity to learn and to thrive in Charlotte? How do we make Charlotte a loving city? Do you want to know? I don't know. Do we have any anti-love people here? How many of you all want your children and family to grow up in a loving system with loving cities? With a loving city. Okay. So the only question that remains is the rhetorical question that Shakespeare spoke through the mouth of Hamlet. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it's nobler for our children to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortunes, or for us to pick up arms against a sea of trouble and through direct opposition end them. But the good thing about that, the answer is in our hands. More directly, the question is, what do we do and what do we each individually and collectively need to do to make Charlotte a loving city? I have some thoughts here. First, on the technical side, at the Schott Foundation in 2018, we pulled together a tool called the Loving Cities Index to measure the supports available for young people and families in any given city. 26 indicators looking at access to affordable housing, access to healthy food, access to livable wages. And that document can be found at schottfoundation.org. But where our greatest opportunity is, beloved, is on the personal side. I think that's where our greatest opportunity. You know, Andrea and I have been reading a book by Jay Shetty called The 8 Rules of Love. I don't need to tell you who picked out that book. But in the book, Jay talks about the 4 phases of love. I actually believe there are 5. I'll explain it to you later. Because I believe that these phases are significant for our individual and collective journeys to make Charlotte a loving city. Well, the first phase is attraction. That's a no-brainer. You saw them across the room. Your heart jumped. There was attraction. It's self-explanatory. This is the phase that's the easiest. And for some of you who are saying, well, Charlotte already loves and is attracted to people of all different races and ethnicities. Look across the room. And I will say, Charlotte has stepped into that phase of attractiveness. It's a city that loves the attractiveness of being diverse, a city that loves the cultural options in food and learning environment. But yet, it is still possible to be attracted to something or someone and not be in relationship with them. Very much possible. Too many cities and countries across the world begin and end their lovability journey with attractiveness. But we can't do that here in Charlotte because our possibilities are greater. So we have to move beyond the I have a black friend. We have great food options, phase 1 of attractiveness. We've got to be able to be bold enough to go to the next phase. Are we bold enough to go to the next phase? Yes. Phase 2. Angel, we've got to move to the dream phase. So this is where it gets interesting. This is where you meet the family members. This is a stage that as a loving city, we began to share and reconcile our collective visions and goals. And while it might seem like we're alike, we don't all have the same backgrounds, aspirations, or we haven't experienced the same level of trauma. Any parent will tell you, you will soon learn that your own children have different goals and aspirations than you do. And you are related and likely they grew up in your house. I told you, Andrea and I, we were excited about North Carolina, great public school, in-state college tuition rate options. And for our daughter Amber, North Carolina A&T, UNC Charlotte, UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina State. But every time Andrea and I board that plane to fly to Los Angeles to visit Amber at UCLA, I am reminded that we don't all dream the same. When we brought to the table our in-state tuition rate dreams, she brought her warmer weather and track and field themes. We may be alike, but we don't all dream alike, and that's okay. So we've got to create the tables and the collective spaces for us to come together and co-create. Recently, Charlotte City and corporate loving partners came together. Partners like Lowe's, Duke Endowment, Bank of America, individual donors like Rick Elias and Michael Jordan came together to invest $250 million in a racial equity initiative, a partnership to advance racial equity. Now, this is something that many of the other cities on that list of 50 were unable to even get their corporate and city partners to agree on a public resolution, let alone an investment. But now that we're in phase 2 of dreaming, we must ensure that all of the community partners who are necessary are at the table to co-create, to act, and to move. Specifically, those closest to the challenges and closest to the solution. Too often we leave youth and parents of color and organizers from the table when it's time to co-create, to move, to vision, and to act. If we truly want to see our investments appreciate, we have to make sure that we have a diverse group of managers managing the portfolio. Those of you in business understand this, especially if you're in the financial sector. In your investment portfolio, many of us may have equities, bonds, some might even have cash. Well, because making democracy work is a human enterprise, organizers are an asset class. And in any investment designed to produce progress in our democracy and growth and opportunity, it has to have the blue chip organizing parents at the table and in the portfolio. And here's something we know from business. We don't all have to share the same values as long as we respect everyone at the table. How many of you all know that you can love someone difficult from a radius of respect? But if you don't show someone respect, they will never feel loved, and you will never feel their love. If we can't be a loving city, if we don't decide to create the tables, the spaces where we can collectively act and move. Look across the room. Not just across your table, but across the room. Yeah, that means you have to work with them. You may have to work with individuals who, by the very nature of working with them, will take hours, days, months, and years off of your life. And if you don't know anybody like that, you might be that person. But our ability to do this will take us into phase 3. Do we want to go to phase 3? Yes. The third phase of love is struggle and growth. Now, this is when the honeymoon pictures are packed away, the roses begin to slow down, and it might be time for a touch-up. This is the phase when most people in cities just give up, because it's when you are confronted with a genuine effort that fails to meet our human expectations. When you believe in your best loving effort, you are allocating your time, your resources to create freedom and new opportunities, but it feels to the other like you are only making the back of the bus more comfortable. It's when you believe you are delivering safety and justice, and to the other it feels as if the pain only falls on just us. This isn't uncommon. This is the moment in a loving relationship when you find yourself at the intersection of struggle and growth. There are 3 things that those in a loving relationship disagree over the most. 1, finances. 2, how to raise children. 3, intimacy. Now, I'll leave one of those in the parking lot for you all to deal with on your own. But on the issue of finances and children, we can handle that. We can create a collective North Star regardless of our differences that would guide us forward. Let me give you an example. In this room right now, there are those who are pro-life and pro-choice. And I believe that in the future, you will continue to use the tools of our democracy to create the society that you believe is right. But collectively today, we can stand hand in hand and align that we are going to commit our finances and the city's finances to ensure that every child and family in Charlotte, regardless of structure, has access to healthy food, housing, clothing. That's a loving city. And we can do that regardless of our ideological differences. And our differences don't prevent us from moving forward. And if we practice that level of love, we will learn more about one another, and we will soon find out that there is nothing wrong with Charlotte that what's right with Charlotte can't fix. When Miranda told her story in the video, that was a story of a young lady who was met at the intersection of life. And it took a series of loving people and loving institutions like the YWCA does for so many to step in that intersection of struggle and growth and say, I got you. And the bridge Miranda's abilities to our city's opportunities. And it was that struggle that saw the growth that we see today, because now we have someone who, as a social worker, who is leading the growth in so many different people's lives across this city. So it's a gift that yields a compounding return. The gift that keeps giving. And if we continue to make those who are most in need at a critical time their challenges, our problems also, we will continue to see that progress. And that will take us to the fourth phase. You all ready for the fourth phase? Fourth phase, Kirsten already mentioned, trust. Well, what do I need to trust? To trust that when mistakes are made, good intentions are intended. I get it, trust, but verify. But verify not only from a space of assessment, because we are trying to create a loving community, and it goes beyond assessment. I've never seen a loving partner lean over and say, I love the way you assess me. Or you had me at accountability. Not identity by deficiency, but by support. To Naima, trust that what is for you is for you. It's a misnomer to believe that opportunity is like a pie, and that when you share it, you lose a piece of your pie. The countries and communities that see great progress look at it as a river, and our job is to create new access points or tributaries to that river so that others can receive the waters of opportunity. But unfortunately, this fear and threat of losing is increasingly creating a cancel culture. And we extend that to our young people and the most vulnerable. Make a mistake, we damn you. Say it incorrectly, we damn you. Fall for too long, we damn you. So much so that in our culture, love is almost becoming revolutionary. Well, Charlotte, it's hard to create new access points to the river of opportunity when the only thing coming out the mouth of a river is a dam. Trust, we have to trust that if we release the dam and let the rivers of opportunities flow, we will see amazing things for all of us. But it will only happen if we trust enough to release the dam. Progress in deeds occurs at the rate and speed of trust. We have to trust that when the Creator gave us a new generation, we were given a new opportunity. We spend far too much time looking down on our young people instead of investing in them. You know, it reminds me of a time I saw a journalist interview Michael Jordan. I'm from Chicago, 6 rings. If you don't have 6 rings, shh. But the journalist was interviewing Michael Jordan. And he asked Michael, he said, what was the best team you were ever on? Thinking he would say it was the team where he was MVP, they won the championship. He said, the best team I ever was a part of had someone on the team that everyone thought shouldn't be a part of the team because they thought he was a misfit. They said, why are you bringing this person on this championship team? And that person was Dennis Rodman. And he said, yeah, Dennis had his problems, but I knew that there was excellence in Dennis. I knew that if I took a shot and I missed, he would be right there to rebound. I knew that if I took another shot and I missed, he would be right there to rebound again. And he said, I knew that the more shots I took, the more that I would hit. We don't need individuals who are going to be critical of this generation. We need Charlotte to be prepared to rebound for this generation. You look good today. But for a mother, but for a father, but for a teacher rebounding for you, you wouldn't be here. Let's be real. And some of us are only here not because of what we didn't do, we just didn't get caught. They didn't have the cell phone video. Right? Some of you all remember when the television used to only have 32 channels. I'm not going to point you out. Some of you remember when it was 12. Some of you remember when the television would play all day and at 12 midnight the Star Spangled Banner would come on and it would just go off. And this generation has over 1,000 channels of pre-processed information. If they're not getting it from there, they're getting it from here. processing more information in a day than we had to process in months. And we step into their world and say, when I was little, trust that this generation is a part of the answer. I listened to Charlotte pastor Stephen Furtick when he said this week, by the time we are presented with a problem, heaven already has a plan. We've got to trust that this generation is a part of that plan. And if you look at voting trends, this is a generation that is far more inclusive, far more tolerant. Their penmanship is not as good, but they carry many of the values for one another that we would like to see. It is too often us presenting them with the dilemma, whether they should go blend into how things used to be or have the courage to create a new reality. Beloved, we cannot have courage skip another generation. How many of you all were born in Charlotte? How many of you all were not? Majority of the room. To you, I would say our final trust has to be trust that your presence in this space, in this city, at your job, in that position, with those networks, at this moment, was divinely arranged for such a time as this. Your presence here is not by accident. It's been said that the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. Dr. Howell, you mentioned the March on Washington, and it reminded me of Bayard Rustin. How many of you all know who Bayard Rustin is? How many of you know the 1963 March on Washington? Okay, we're working. If you ever look at the stock footage and look beyond the dais, you will see an unassuming African-American man, Bayard Rustin. He actually organized the March on Washington. And I remember listening to a journalist interview him, and the journalist asked him the question, what was the most important part of the march? Thinking he would say it was Dr. King's speech, Mahalia Jackson's song, Roy Wilkins' speech. He said, yeah, those were important. But equally important were those who said that they would make 500 signs and showed up with 500 signs. Those who said that they would make 300 sandwiches and showed up with 300 sandwiches. Those who said that they would be on the corner of 3rd and F at 4 o'clock, and they were actually on the corner at 3rd and F at 4 o'clock, and it was long before they could text, are you there yet? Bayard was telling the journalists, we don't all have to take the walk of a preacher, but we can all make our walk a sermon. But then he said, equally important were those individuals who stayed after to sweep the streets so that we wouldn't get fined. I can't tell you what your calling is in making Charlotte a loving city, but I can ask you to trust the words of MLK when he said, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted, like Shakespeare wrote poetry, like Raphael carved marble. Do it so well that the host of heaven and earth will say, there lived a great street sweeper who swept his or her job well. You can't trust, I'm not asking you to trust everything that I said, but I will ask you to ultimately trust these words. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another. I will ask you to personally think about how far you've come in your journey, in your life. And if it could happen to you, it could happen for someone else. You were given in birth. You came from a dark, safe place into the light. And I can guarantee you, I wasn't there, but when you hit the light, you changed the room. And since that day, you've been equipped and empowered to change the room. And now that you're in the light, you should be the light. Bring that change everywhere that you go, so that when you go into boardrooms, go in there with an idea that we are going to resource loving partners like the YWCA, like Black and Brown community organizers, so that we can change the room. When you go to city council, go with the recommendations to build loving systems so that we can begin to change the room. And I guarantee you, if you do those things, we will see organizations change. We will see campaigns change. We will see politicians change. We will see policy change. We will see families change. And we will see Charlotte move from a city of 50 to a city set on the hill. That's something that we can do. My time is up, Charlotte, but your time is here. It's time for us to make Charlotte a loving city. It's time for you to be the light. It's time for us to come together and begin to work through all of our phases of love. Do all that we can to make Charlotte a loving city. And so, as I take my seat, wait, I know some of you all say, wait, you told me there were 5 phases, but you only told me 4. I'll tell you the 5th in a quick story. Father was reading his son a bedtime story. He finishes the story, kisses his son on the head, begins to tell his son good night. As he begins to walk away, he hears his son, Daddy, can you bring me a glass of water? Father says to the son, son, I'm sorry you had all day to get water. I'm not giving you water before you go to bed. Good night. Father gets up, begins to walk away again. Hears his son again, Daddy, can you bring me a glass of water? Father says, son, I'm a little upset tonight, right now, because I just explained to you I'm not giving you water before you go to bed. If I come back in here, I'm going to have to come back in here and spank you. Good night. Father closes the door. Here's his son again. Daddy, when you come back in here to spank me, can you bring me a glass of water? The 5th phase is the level of persistence. We are going to have the persistence that we won't give up until we achieve what we want to achieve. So we've come a long way, but we shouldn't feel no ways tired. We've come too far from where we started from. No one told us that the road was going to be easy. We got this far by faith. We have faith. We have the hope. All we need is love. Faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. God bless you all.